Good afternoon, everybody. I'm here with three members of the jury for the OLA Building Awards. This session is going to be called Inside the Jury Room, and we're going to have an informal discussion of sort of what we all look for when we look at the submissions to see who's a potential award winner. And different parties have different reactions to submissions. Some are very visceral, some are technical. I think the architects see things a little differently than the librarians see them. But we'll just get started. I'm going to let actually the other three participants introduce themselves, and then I'm going to launch a slide deck so that you'll see pictures of all the pretty winners. Mary, why don't you start?
Sure, thanks, Darcy. My name is Mary Chevreau. I'm the CEO with the Kitchener Public Library, and I'm also the current chair of the Canadian Urban Libraries Council. So I am thrilled to be here and was thrilled to be part of this selection.
And we'll go Zoom clockwise. We'll do Eric next.
Hi, my name is Eric Riddell. I'm from Schultz and Zabak Architects in Kingston. I'm principal with the firm. This is my second time being on the jury, and I've been also a member of the conference committee for a few years as well, helping organizing everything. And this is just a great way to sort of stay up to date on libraries. And we do a lot of libraries, so it helps us see what other library branches are up to and new ideas.
And Susan, finish with you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Susan Spiegel, and I'm an architect. And although I'm from Sudbury originally, I am a Toronto architect. I'm also here as president of the Ontario Association of Architects. And I was delighted to be asked because I was saying originally when I drive anywhere in Ontario, and every time I come across a library, I'm like, wow, who did that? Who did that? There is a very serious commitment to architecture and in the library institution. And I'm just really so happy to be here to be part of these awards. And all of the submissions were amazing, but these three really stood out. So I'm really excited to talk to my colleagues and Darcy about, the real excitement we had doing this adjudication.
Excellent. And that's funny. That's exactly how I feel, that libraries are usually now architecturally significant. We're seeing a lot more of that. And I don't know if that started with Toronto Public 15 or 20 years ago, because they have a very ambitious program of renovation and rebuild where they do 3 to 4 branches every year. They have the wherewithal with 100 branches, 3 to 4 a year is pretty good. And then I think other people have realized you don't have to build an institutional cinder block building. It can be architecturally significant. So I'm going to launch the slide deck and we will go directly in. Okay, is everyone seeing that?
Yes.
Yep.
Perfect. I'm just going to move you up to the corner so I can see what I'm doing here. And again, it's Inside the Jury Room, the 2021 Library Building Awards, Architectural and Design Transformation. So these were renovations. These were not renovations or additions. They were not new builds from scratch. The awards jury was Nancy Black from Nipissing, Mary, of course, Bob Jackson from Ryerson, Eric, and Susan, and myself. It's my third time on the jury, and I hope to do it until I retire, or maybe even beyond, because I do enjoy it. I think that libraries, as a public institution, have a mandate to be a community beacon and to be something that draws the community in. And I think the way you do that is by creating architecturally significant buildings. And like I said, in my 3 years on the jury, they've all been winners. We get a lot of submissions. I think we had 12 this year. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was 12, and we came up with 3 winners, and they were strong candidates. So we'll launch right in. Our 2021 award winners were Clearview Public, the Stainer branch, LaBelle and Boulian Architects, University of Toronto University College, Cohn and Chenier plus ERA Architects, and Windsor Public Library, the John Muir branch, G&G Architecture. So we're going to go right in with Clearview, and there's the first shot. And I'm going to go to the next slide, and then I'll turn it over to whoever wants to jump in. What grabbed you? Why did this one say to you, I'm an award winner?
I'm just going to jump right in because I used to drive through Stainer every week on my way to my parents had a place in Thornbury. And this is really bold. It's also very Canadian. There was something very amazing about, I think, the types that they premise this on: the shed, the arena, the freestanding industrial building in a field. And I think that they just manipulated the form in such a way to make it a real standout. And it's not as complicated on the interior as a lot of the other ones, but they've done it in such a way that it's multi-purpose. It can be anything. And at the moment, it has all these beautiful views to the landscape, which you don't get obviously in an urban condition. It's beautifully sited, and it's beautiful in winter. And it really hits all the marks of being a community building, and it really makes the other two buildings that are a little bit mute. I mean, the arena is, it says a basic shed with no windows, and then the interstitial building is also a little mute, and this really makes the whole thing sing. It's like a beacon. And I think libraries need to be three things. They're like a sanctuary of knowledge and peacefulness and reflection, and they're also a beacon. And they have to have a very big community engagement component. And of all the three winners, they all three had this, but this is a serious beacon in the landscape. And I love this one.
Yeah, I think I love the angles, the play of the angles and the roof line, the windows, and the position, even the orientation of this building on the property. I think, and I will just admit, I am Canadian, but I hate winter. I'm not a winter person. But that winter shot is stunning, and it even in that middle of winter, that is a very welcoming space, somewhere that I would like to spend some time. And I think it's a great addition, a community hub that was much, I think, needed, probably not only on that site, but for the community. So it was beautiful.
I think I had very similar thoughts to Susan and Mary, and the comfort and just the simplicity. It doesn't always look that simple, the form, but quite a simple extension in plan, and then simply extending the volume of the arena with making some bold gestures to highlight the entrance and bring in some additional natural light. Just make it a building that attracts people, creates great views, can make great opportunities for different things to occur inside, a little flexibility of space down in the future, and brings a new life to the rest of the community center and new people to come out to there. It provides opportunities for expansion if they need to, and more connections with the landscape around it. So I think it'll help bring a new life to the building that it doesn't see all year round.
Yeah, it's funny because who thought you could make an arena attractive? But really this addition, because it does harken back to the roof lines of the arena, it works. And as Eric pointed out too, and Mary, the light wells to capture the light. What the people listening to this aren't going to know is in our submission, we had all of the technical drawings as well. And Luke and his team were very careful about the positioning of this building on the site to maximize the collection of light in a way that wasn't glaring. Because as you can see, there's a lot of glass, and yet it's apparently, no matter where the light is coming from, which angle, which direction, depending on time of day, you never get any glare. So it was very thoughtfully designed in terms of placement on the site. And like I said, this one viscerally, I think, grabbed all of us because it's such a stark setting, especially the winter shot. I love winter, by the way, with a snowboard cross racer and a ski racer in the family, because my mother-in-law lives at the base of Blue Mountain. So that's where we spend all our time in the winter. So to see this in the snow fields of Stayner, it's fantastic. And again, I think you're unlikely to see any development around it. I think it's always going to be in this type of setting where it's sort of that link between the semi-urbanism of Stayner and its rural agrarian history. It is quite a striking building. I think that covers it. It's
a real celebration of, to me, a Canadian architecture, really basic shed architecture that just literally they like opened it up for the entrance and they cranked open the roof for the light. They just did a really fantastic job. And this, to me, this feels like the beginning of a vernacular Canadian architectural language,
Hmm.
which
You know,
we need.
definitely worked, and on a reasonable budget as well, which is quite amazing.
Yeah, I
All
think
right.
the simplicity of some of the exterior and just the restraint and in having very few materials
Yeah.
helps keep it a very bright, clean building.
Excellent. All right. Now here's the big one. University of Toronto University College. This one has a definite wow factor, which everyone will see as we go through the pictures. When we did the interviews with co-engineer and the former principal, Donald of University College, they didn't have any pictures, so it didn't come through. But in this slide deck, you're going to get a look at some of the very unique things that they did that I think pay homage to the historical nature of the building, add to it, but are modern touches. This one is fantastic. We'll just jump right in. Anyone want to start?
I think, the first time I saw this, I thought it was a bit much, to be honest. But then the more I saw it, the more I looked at it, the more I delved into it and sort of understood it, the more I grew to appreciate it. And I think it's a building that the more time you spend in it, the more you'll appreciate it, the more you find out what it offers. And this space used to have a historic mezzanine in it, and that was recreated and provided the opportunity to explore parts of the building that people haven't seen and details of the historical fabric that just were way up and out of the way. And now you can sit there and enjoy the space in ways you couldn't for many, many years.
I just, this is something that made me catch my breath as I opened up the first slide deck to look at it. It has that glorious feeling of churchness, secular spirituality, I guess is what the libraries have become. They did such a beautiful job restoring the heritage components of this perfectly, and then in a very modern way, which is, both co-engineer and ERA together really working in the most brilliant way, that everything that they inserted that was not a restoration of heritage is of course completely modern. So you get this wonderful dialogue of the history of architecture in such a building. So the building is teaching you things as it's speaking to you, and it's a library that contains all these books that are about knowledge, and it's in this is what I do really like about co-engineers' work, is I always feel their buildings are very they speak to you about the importance of detailing, the importance of view, the importance of lighting, and it's very subtle and at the same time magnificent. And I don't know how they do it, but I love to study it because it really does both brilliantly.
Yeah, I think I was impressed with the way that they were so respectful of the heritage elements, yet not afraid to make those changes to really produce such an impressive space. I love the cladding. I love both inside and out. I mean that just the copper cladding on the exterior is so wonderful and adds such an element of interest, and yet it's just so well married to the historical brickwork. I just love this space. It almost makes me want to go back to school, but
Like this secret, it's both so beautiful, but it's also very secret, and it's not a door. Like it's not like
right.
you go to this and you open a door. It's like it's the vertical elevation.
Right.
It is quite interesting because Donald said it's, the University College is likened to Hogwarts because it is an iconic building. And I think the touches, because I just noticed today on this slide how the curving staircase almost looks like the start of a Nautilus. And I mean, just the attention to detail is unbelievable in this reno. Everything is so well thought out. And in the interviews they had mentioned, John had mentioned how they installed the ramps to get by from where there were places where there were 2 or 3 stairs, because there are so many different elevations in this building and it was not terribly accessible. But the way they were able to sort of integrate them, they almost look like they've always been there. So I think that the thoughtfulness that went into every single detail, and you all know my favorite is this external elevator shaft, because I think it's fantastic. And when that copper starts to veneer and verdigris, it's going to look fantastic. It looks like it's always been there, but it also is whimsical because are they dragon scales? You know, what are they? And I think it's truly eye-catching. It didn't have to be, but they did it. And I think that adds to it. So that attention to detail, that thoughtfulness of every single thing they did, that's hard to do, to maintain your focus on such a massive project and to make sure that everything works. And again, I think we all sort of had our breath taken away when we saw the images, because it's like, oh my God, that's also spectacular and fantastic. We don't have a slide here showing the new mezzanine, which they've actually made into a little cafe. But that as well was so well done.
I think that interior space with the dark shelves really speaks and gives the feeling of, you know, old European libraries, the warmth, the coziness of that. But then it's totally modern at the same time.
Yeah.
And so you get wrapped in the books, and the books are there and with you, but then you get these bright little spaces, as you can see in this image, where you're now up at the arch top of the windows where you couldn't get before, and you get a great view outside, and you can feel and see the space inside. You know, staff actually have some great spaces in here as well, sort of where they're sitting underneath the stair to see everything that's going on without having to have staff all throughout the space. So just it can minimize that. So it allows privacy for the users, great supervision for staff. You know, it's a great,
a simple integrated desk, exactly, with views of the entire space. Yeah.
And I think
And that is a big thing in libraries.
Oh, sorry. Their use of lighting in the stacks is most unusual, and yet allows it to be bright enough so people can actually go into the stacks, particularly on the lower level, on the main level, with those curved sort of, they look sort of curved lighting columns. I think are so interesting, and yet provide the light that's obviously needed in order to really be able to see the collections. So nicely done all around. Love it.
Yeah. It's a funny building because the parts that are 100 years old, you know, yes, you can see they're 100 years old, they look historical. In 100 years, I think you're going to look at the new stuff and say, oh, that's not dated at all. You're not going to say that screams 2021. I think everything meshes so well. And that would have been a huge challenge. And I feel they pulled it off, definitely. I mean, this lighting is ultra modern. It actually works very well in that space.
Yeah, and then in one of the other spaces, there was an insertion of a ceiling element that was floating that added lighting and acoustic elements to the space. You know, it's obviously new, but it fits with the space, and it provides a lot of technical features that just weren't in that space that allow it to be used for new modern uses. Presentation, audiovisual, and
that's right, because that's part of their conference center now. Yeah.
And you can still enjoy the heritage of the space. And then,
okay, let's move on to our third. We're doing well time-wise. And this is Windsor Public Library. And Windsor, again, this was converted from a 1921 fire hall and an 1850s stable to come up with this space.
I mean,
so Mary, let's start with you.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
you
wait
know,
your turn, Susan. Wait your turn.
Thank you. I love this building because it is such a beacon, and it actually looks like a beacon the way they've illuminated the one section. And it's in an area that, you know, it is in a neighborhood. I think it's a slightly underserved neighborhood. And so to provide this service and this community hub to this neighborhood in this way by really integrating old with new again, and having that ability to really use both of those buildings that are so different to provide a service and a space for the community, I think is beautiful. And that is such, to me, is such a gorgeous shot, going from one area of the fire hall to the other. It's just so gorgeous to me.
You know, one of the things that we really struggle with as architects and in architecture is how to get the public to understand what architects do. It is a very difficult, it's a very difficult thing. We're a very insular profession in a way, and yet we do all these public buildings. And the interface really requires a lot more work and education. And this building to me it's like a book on architecture. It's a chapter and verse about, it's exposed the structure, like up above, you see like the old structure of the building. You see the new structure, how they hung a mezzanine. And so you actually can see, and it's not like the Pompidou. It's not like over celebrating, overly muscular structure. This is the structure in the ceiling, and they've worked with it. So they've exposed the old structure. They've inserted new structure. They've shown you how glass can be a structural wall, a structural wall. There is an emulsion on that wall. The glass is thick enough to support itself. Big surfaces. And it's also managed to have all these very large spaces, like the space itself, and yet to create all this wonderful intimacy. You can see how many people sit all around in the upper floor having intimate moments. And even on the ground floor, they must have done some wonderful kind of sound control, that people can sit in the large open space downstairs and look like they're not just distracted by noise. And I love that they did all this modern wood and clean floor and things on coasters. You can just imagine moving that desk out for a big party whenever we're allowed to have parties again. It looks ultimately flexible, which is what this kind of library is. It is like a community center and a library and a cooling center and a teaching building and a beacon. It hits all the marks of what a library needs to be. And I love this. I can't wait to go and visit these 3 libraries, truthfully, and just to feel them.
It's elegant and simple, and that's the other part, right? They haven't overstuffed it. It's very functional, but it feels warm and very inviting.
I think in a lot of ways, this is so different than Stainer, but it's so similar in a lot of ways, because there's a lot of familiarity with what's in here. The wood shelves, the space, the scale. People coming into here after they see it on the street, they're going to come in and they're just going to feel like it's a very comfortable place to be. You can have this large space, but while that's happening, you can still sneak off and find a quiet place to read, or sit on a computer, or go back into I think in the stable, some of the local history stuff was going on back there. And all this is going on in a building that's being brought back to life. That the text that we got about it talked about how bad the condition of the structure of the stable was, and the soils in the area, and the ability for this branch to bring it back to life and give it back to the community. I think there was a lot of effort done to do that and make sure that this was a important part of the community.
That's right, Eric. It was a brownfield site. I remember the architect mentioning that it was a lot of money just to remediate the site.
And
go ahead.
I think we talked about what the important things of the library are, and that's an important thing as well, to say, this is an important building in the community, and we want to maintain it, and we want to let people use it and enjoy it for what it can be and what it can offer.
This is a lesson. It's a very good lesson in R&R. You don't have to tear down everything and start from scratch and put it in landfill. I mean, even if it is expensive to do the brownfield remediation and all the work they did in it, it's completely worth it. It's going to be good for a couple 100 years. I mean, if the planet is still around, it will still be here for 200 years, easy.
What a segue, because the architect's firm has done 3 or 4 other historical projects in the Sandwich neighborhood of Windsor. So they're sort of specializing in that, in bringing these iconic historical buildings back. And I had used the line in the interview that you can designate a building, that doesn't necessarily save it. And they've done a really good job of saving it. I love some of the touches, as well as everyone mentioned, the use of plywood, of natural materials. I'm a big fan of retroplated concrete floors. I've now done 3 libraries where that's what we've done. And it's so easy care, but it's never going to be dated. It works because it's non-slip. It's easy to clean, it's easy to maintain. So they retroplated the floors. And then for me, I'm going to jump ahead. The bridge to the stable is excellent as well. They used reclaimed wood from the old floors. And then my favorite is the Lightbox Children's Department. You can't see it in any of the other slides, but this little add-on, that's the children's department, and it's all glass. So when you're walking through from main structure towards stable on the first floor, you go through this children's department. And that's just a nice little touch, ultra modern touch, but it works. It works in the space. Again, very, very thoughtful project. The attention to detail, and Eric had mentioned it and Susan had mentioned it as well, all of the underpinning that had to be done with the beacon tower, because it was basically in a state of disrepair. So what they did was they inserted a tower framework within this older brick tower. That alone, they were talking clearances of a few centimeters on either side to be able to build this new beacon tower. That's phenomenal and so thoughtful on the part of the architect to say, we clearly want to retain this tower, but we need to modernize it. How are we going to do that? So basically, they kept the shell and then replaced the innards completely. That's a huge engineering feat of itself.
One thing too, I wanted to mention that we haven't really talked about a lot of the other projects were beautiful inside, but they didn't bring their beauty outside to welcome the public in the same way. And it could have been a budget problem, or it could have been a lack of imagination problem. I don't know, but you can see here that it doesn't take a lot to make it feel like this is a place that belongs to the people of the city. The way that they've opened the windows to let you see inside, they've got a beautiful, like clean platform, like outside, inside floor, almost continues that concrete floor that we're looking at, a small circle. It didn't need like a massive planting. And you can see how doing very simple, pointed, specific things makes you really want to go into that library. And all three of them did something special between the outside and the inside, because really architecture doesn't stop at the wall. And all three of these buildings not only did beautiful buildings, beautiful interiors, but they also extended a generous gesture out to the public realm.
Yeah, I think the front of this building just really invites you to actually pull a chair out from inside and sit out on the front of it and enjoy the neighborhood that maybe hasn't been enjoyed for many, many years. And hopefully we can do that again soon. But it's, as you drive by as a newcomer to that area, or just as a neighbor, to be able to see that there's activity in the library is so important.
Yeah. I think having that glass front is really what makes it, right? Gives it that presence and gives it that warmth. The fact that you can see activity in there, and just they could have done something else, right? To have much less glass, and they went for the glass, and I think it's beautiful.
No, exactly. It's almost like it's wall-less, right?
Right.
You are drawn in. Yeah.
Yeah.
This was a fire station, right?
Yeah. So it's probably the doors.
Left no fire doors. I mean, they've left that. That's what really good restoration architecture does. I mean, you work with the elements that you have, and they did a beautiful. They did a great. They came up with a great idea. They didn't fill it in.
Right.
Brick. They left it open, and it was a great idea.
There are obviously modern insertions like the glass box and the glass doors in the front and the glass connection, but they somehow strengthen the rest of the heritage in this and just draw attention to everything else about it, rather than being something unto themselves. They're bright and they really draw your attention, but they draw your attention to the whole building, not just that one element.
Yeah, no, I think this one again grabbed, I think, every jury member. That's sort of it for the slides, but I had a general question for our two architects, for Susan and Eric. I don't know how Mary feels, but when I see library architectural, again, it's what grabs me is the aesthetic, the visceral look. What grabs me? What stands out? As architects, are you equally drawn by the technical proficiency of how they've either done the design or some of the specifics from an environmental standpoint or a siting standpoint? Or are you also visually, it grabs you and then you appreciate it at that level? Or do you go deeper into the underpinnings?
You want to start, Susan?
We can go back and forth, but yeah, you know, I always like to go first. I don't know why, because I get so excited by the questions, I can hardly contain myself. But the thing that is amazing about architecture and design in general, which it's very hard to unpack it, but it's called design thinking. And that's when you think in a very big picture. So you're thinking about everything. You're thinking about the sustainability. What can you save of the existing structure? Who uses this? How do they use it? Like there is nothing when you do a good piece of architecture, there's nothing that's not considered in the great big picture. And then you start to put things together. Oh, all how people use it should maybe all be represented in big glass windows, but also we'll mirror that as a beacon to like wave to people, come on in from afar, not just from the street. So there's these kinds of adjacencies of thought, design thought, that happen when you're kind of collecting all this information from everyone and every person in the building, and it all speaks to you. And then this magic happens in your head and on the paper, and in collaboration with everybody, it turns into gestures, technology, lighting, entrance sequences, flows, like all of those things. They really come from asking the right questions and hearing from the people who use the building and understanding building structure. So all of those things, and I couldn't even say one's more important than another. And I think what you respond to when you go, is that it's a well thought out building, that then the correct gestures of architectural language are applied to that thought. And that's what excites me. When all of those things come together, it's brilliant. And you can feel the thought in your like you have a visceral response, but you can also feel how intelligent it is. It is a kind of magic. That's what happens for me.
For me, I don't think it's one piece of the design or the architecture or the technology that stands out. It's all the little things that sort of start coming out subtly. Some of them jump in your face, but then that brings out the functionality that starts showing how it can be used, how this is going to add to the community, how you're going to maintain something that could have been torn, a building that could have been torn down. Now, how does this building become accessible in many different ways to many different people? Just all the layers sort of come out rather than the big things, where hopefully a big element, a big design element starts to expose something else, like the stair highlighting the staff desk and how well it functions on the other, how the children's area creates a great link in Windsor between the two parts of the old building, bringing people together. Important part of these library design awards is how these libraries function, and it's not how they look. And I think that we've spent many years working on libraries with many different clients and many different perspectives and tastes. And to see so many libraries that are submitted that are so different, but they're all so good in their own way. They bring accessibility, they bring heritage preservation, they bring ecological thought, just comfort of space, design, presence, all the different parts of our life. And as architects come out in all these libraries.
And the public, I just want to add two things, and the public understanding of a building and the intimacy. They bridge that, all of them, very well. Libraries have to do that.
Well, and I think in different years, we've had a lot of different submissions, and we had good submissions, really good submissions from some of the bigger systems in Ontario. But to see the Stainer with a really great library, to see a really great library coming from an academic setting, rather than just a big box of books and nasty study carrels, to show that you can make something great, and a great place to learn, a great place to be, a great place to socialize in any community, in any part of our community as well, is really important from these awards.
That's music to Mary in my ears, because as librarians, for us, the functionality has to be there.
Yeah.
And I don't know about Mary, she has her own spectacular central library that was a great renovation and addition. But I've had to, in the past, talk to architects and say, okay, yeah, that looks really beautiful, but it's 3 inches off the floor. And how's a 75-year-old going to get up from that chair? So, the fact that you're identifying functionality as a main tenet is again, music to my ears.
Yeah, well, that's one thing that's really drawn us as an office to this conference and these awards, is the importance it brings both to function and design. And I think that's really what good architecture is all about. It's about the balance of all of the aspects, not just parts of them.
Mhm.
Anyone have anything else they want to add before we sign off? Okay, so what I'll do, I'll remind everyone, this is going to be shown at the Super Conference next year in February of 2022, which coincidentally is the deadline for submissions for the next round of OLA Building Awards, which will be new builds. So we encourage everybody to get their submissions in before the deadline. I'm not sure if it's the end of February. Certainly that will come out in the next couple of months, but you'll see this video at Super Conference 2022, and the award winners for new builds will be done in June or July of 2022 at the next annual Library as Place conference. Thank you everyone for participating. I hope to see you again on the jury. It's been a pleasure. You were a great jury, by the way, I'll just say that. So if you're wanting to return, I'm sure we'll be open to that.
I
Great
would
fun.
love,
Thank you. It was very fun, and I look forward to the next one.
It's a
Excellent.
great experience. I look forward to it again.
I just
Excellent.
loved being on this jury, meeting all of you and seeing all these amazing submissions. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, we'll turn it back over to Melissa.
Take care.